Carlos Valera is a Cuban singer-songwriter that grew up in the Vedado district in Havana, Cuba. Throughout his adolescence, Carlos Valera enjoyed playing in rock bands after elementary school, which were heavily stylized after Beatlemania. Growing up, Valera was very much inspired by the music of Silvio Rodriguez and Pablo Milanés due to them being heavily tied to the Nueva Trova movement. La Nueva Trova movement is a political movement that came about after the fall of the Soviet Union and the deposition of President Batista. This movement was characterized with a revival of folk music, which focused on the political and social unrest during the 1960s and 70s. The goal of this movement was to criticize the Cuban government, either covertly or outright, and brought to light very controversial topics like injustice, socialism, sexism, and etc. The song Muros y Puertas, English translation Walls and Doors, was published in his 2000s album called Nubes, and had successfully surpassed Cuban borders. It had even been covered by Jackson Browne in 2014. Muros y Puertas, like most of his other songs, encompasses the lack of freedom in Cuba in regards to speech, the downsides to living in a socialist country, which doesn't give the people what it had initially promised, and the rigidity of the socialist government in power. The dynamic of the song is structured to be light in the beginning, with the soft repeating notes being strummed on the acoustic guitar, and then its timbre intensifies with the chorus piece. The song also gets more complex with the inclusion of layered ostinatos during the chorus, and then it simplifies again during the other verses. He even bends the pitch of his guitar right at this part, which mimics the sitar from India. In his song, Varela uses juxtaposition to create lyrics that are politically inclined to express his negative views on socialism in Cuba. For example, his lyrics question the purpose of the moon without the night and openly states that freedom is only attainable when it isn't privatized. Its significance as a social movement piece derives mainly from its popularity and widespread acceptance by not only native Cubans, but also Cubans that were exiled in Miami and other small diasporic communities throughout the U.S. It was also very inspiring because regardless of the strict censorship in Cuba, Varela decided to stay in Cuba and give his people the voice they needed. He even goes as far as hosting free concerts and shows in Cuba because he wanted to put aside his monetary gain and focus on the messages of his songs, and gives Cubans the sense of unity and hope for a better nation. This artist and song are very significant for me because my family came from Cuba as refugees and lived under both Batista and Castro rule. So over a short period of time, my family lost and had to suppress a lot of what they held dear: property, religious values, what limited freedom they had, and etc. After coming to America and settling in a dominantly Hispanic community, a lot of what was happening back in Cuba still affected our family members that had decided to stay behind in Cuba. So having an artist that openly criticized the government and expressed the opinions and thoughts of the people who weren't allowed to express it was very touching and inspiring to me.